again, everybody. Welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker, and a lot of crazy things are going around. This new year still. We're only, 6 weeks into it, and we already have kidnappings and bombings and these tremendous things that are happening in Italy. I don't know if you saw that heat-like moment in Puglia, where these fucking guys robbed an armored truck on a highway. They blew it up. I mean, the footage is incredible. I'm going to get back to that this week, but today we're going to put a bow on the 2025 season, and it was, I have to say, it ended in a very dull, boring, awful note. You know, I've been watching the first Super Bowl I ever saw. The first Super Bowl I kind of remember is the 1980 Super Bowl. It was the Raiders, Oakland Raiders at the time, against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Raiders were the first wild card team to win the Super Bowl ever, when wild card teams basically had no shot at winning the Super Bowl back then. And that was 46 years ago. So I've seen a lot of Super Bowls. I've seen a lot of blowouts. The NFC for 12, 13 years dominated the Super Bowl. I think the average margin of victory was 32 points. It was crazy. We've seen a lot of lopsided matchups. But you could always look at those games and say, you know, that Giant team in 1986, that team is one for the ages. That Bear team in 85, one for the ages. The 49ers had two teams, the 84 team and the 89 team. They were one for the ages. The 89 team, to me, is the greatest football team I ever saw. Not only that, the greatest sports team one of the greatest sports teams I ever saw. And they blew out their opponents easy. Of course, Montana beat Marino and Elway, in my opinion, the second and third greatest quarterbacks of all time, but that's another story. But this game last night was so bad. It was a bad game, played by two teams that aren't very good. One team that just didn't belong there. And it was slow to start, slow to develop. Both quarterbacks, Darnold started very slow. May never had a chance. And the coaches just played it very tight to the vest. McDonald, I could get it. He's young. But Vrabel, you know, you've been to Super Bowls before. You have to know. And they incredibly didn't make any adjustments to max protect May at all. He was sacked 6 times last night. They couldn't block them to save their lives. And you know what Seattle did? I noticed this, and I read about it somewhere else. They were not blitzing, but they were pressuring with cornerbacks and defensive backs, and gave New England different looks. They could never adjust to it. And you would think Vrabel comes from the Belichick school. He's a defensive-minded guy. You didn't recognize this right away? But the Seattle defense just destroyed the Patriots, especially on the front seven. The Seahawks brought so much pressure from the secondary, which completely confused the Pats' blocking, leading to pressures and leading to a sack from a corner, Witherspoon, early on in the game. And from there, the Seattle defensive line just dominated the Pats' offensive line. And we talked about this last week. The Patriots had to figure out a way not to allow that to happen, and they couldn't. And McDonald's defense demolished May. He looked like a deer in headlights. Sacked 6 times, picked off 2 times. I think he fumbled 2, so 3 turnovers. Anytime the Pats even veined a pulse, the Seahawks snuffed out the life of them. And Seattle's defense, especially in the secondary, was just they were incredible. the two best units on the field yesterday were the Seattle special teams. The kicker, a lot of people thought the kicker, there was some noise at the kicker, and even the punter should have had some serious MVP considerations. They'll never get a special teams guy. Well, kicker, I should say. The guy had 17 points. The punter was amazing. He just put the ball, he just kept putting the Patriots back in long drives. Terrible, terrible starting position for the Patriots all game long. And for 3 quarters, the unit that I told you would be the most important, the secondary, smothered those wide receivers, and they made May move off his first reads over and over and over again, and that allowed the rush to get to him. And the Pats quarterback had 0 targets open throughout that game, throughout those 3 quarters. And they just dismantled that front line. And May, of course, he's the quarterback. He's going to get most of the grief in this. I mean, what did you want the guy to do? They were in his face the entire time. May picked an awful night to be awful. It's never a good day to be bad in the Super Bowl. But they had he was flustered. And he's a young quarterback. And I think the Patriots got to the Super Bowl 2 years too soon. May struggled all night long, reading the defenses. He was clutching and holding the football in ways that just weren't good. He looked so uncomfortable, and the pass rush kept coming at him from every angle. May finished 27 of 43 for 295 yards and 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, and a fumble. But those numbers, the 295, the 2 touchdowns, the 27 of 40, those are all cosmetic. Those all happened at the end of the game. I think at 19-0, I think the statistic was that the Seahawks had 297 yards of total offense and the Patriots had 85 or 84. And the disappointment that I had in Seattle was the fact that they could have had a legitimate shot of getting the first Super Bowl shutout. They called off the Dogs after, midway through the third quarter. They kind of played back. They rushed their 4 guys, but they didn't have the smothering in the secondary that they had all game long. But Drake May had little to no support at all. Little to no support at all. The rushing offense for the Pats was non-existent, and the offense just sputtered when things mattered. New England punted on all 5 of its non-kneel first half possessions. They generated just 4 first downs in the first half. And the game was within reach. Seattle couldn't do anything. Darnold struggled in the beginning of the game too. Field goal, and you're thinking at 9-0. You're thinking maybe Seattle's in trouble here because sooner or later May is going to, or New England, they're going to figure something out. It never happened. It never happened. The offense just crapped out, going 3 and out in their first 3 possessions of the third quarter, and its one first down on 4 drives in the quarter came by penalty. Made very few plays, and he just could not. He just couldn't get things going. It just seemed like he never had a chance to start. Of course, there wasn't a real dominant performance or showcase performance from the quarterback. Darnold was shaky, but he did have his MVP running back, Super Bowl MVP running back, Kenneth Walker III, took the load and ran the Seahawks to victory on an array of outside runs that just gashed up the Patriot defense, which I thought was tired. They looked tired. And entering the Super Bowl, the Patriots defense now entered the Super Bowl, not allowing a running back to get the game more than 40 yards in the postseason. Walker had 135 yards rushing on 27 carries. He had runs of 30 and 29-yard carries in the second quarter and earned 5 runs of 10 yards plus. You do that with their defense, you almost always win. Coupled with the fact that the Patriots had no offensive line, and if you don't have an offensive line, you almost have no shot. How the Pats got here, I still don't know. How they got here because of terrible quarterback play throughout the postseason. The Chargers were beat up. Harbaugh took them as far as he can go with that team. And they beat a backup quarterback in Denver, barely beat a backup quarterback. So we should have known that this was happening. But in the beginning of this game, Darnold struggled to move the ball through the air. He missed wide open guys. And he could have blown the game open early. The Seahawks could have been in trouble against this good New England defense. Darnold was not good at all. But their defense and their running game and their special teams saved them. Their special teams was very intricate in this game. And listen, it sounds boring, but defense wins championships. You know something? So do special teams. You got a punter and a kicker that are just putting up field goals and pinning teams back inside their own 10-yard line. That takes a lot of pressure off your offense. A lot. And it bought Darnold time. It bought Darnold time. And as we say, Seattle win their second Super Bowl, 29-13 over the Pats. The young coach is the toast of the town now. He's already lost his offensive coordinator, which this team isn't about offense anyway. They are going to be a team that I'm not saying that they're going to repeat next year. I don't think they're that good. Their defense is incredible, and their coach coaches the right way. He knows when to run the full ball. He knows when to take control of the game. He knows how to maintain a lead. Defensive coaches are better head coaches, in my estimation, than offensive coordinators, especially this young crop of offensive coordinators. And I'm not talking about the Andy Reids. I'm talking about the guys that are young now, that are offensive coordinators, that have head coaching positions. They don't know how to control games once they have the lead in the fourth quarter. They just don't know how to do it. This guy, at 12-0, you knew the game was almost over when they scored that touchdown to make it 19-0. You could have turned your sets off. It was over. They were never coming back. He wouldn't allow it. He would run the football over and over and over and over again. But this Super Bowl was just very bad because there was no star power. This Super Bowl needed Allen. They needed Josh Allen. They needed the Bills. They needed a story. They didn't have a story here. There's nobody to talk about. The quarterbacks, May is too young. Darnold's too vanilla. The coaches, there's no history there. There's no drama. The only thing people were talking about regarding this Super Bowl was that fucking halftime show and the other halftime show that TPUSA had. And just to get on that, the Bad Bunny. That was one of the most tasteless episodes I've ever seen. Listen, the NFL can hire who they want. Who cares? Right? And nobody cares about the halftime show. Nobody does. This was an affront to Trump. We all know that. Right? They could have gone a multitude of ways with this halftime show. You're in the Northern California, San Francisco, Santa Clara area, you could have had Metallica there to do your halftime show. It would have been fantastic because they're from that area. If you wanted to honor somebody, you could have honored Ozzy Osbourne and have all these rock stars down there. It would have been phenomenal. How about honoring a California kid named Brian Wilson and having those great Beach Boys songs on there? You could have done that. There were other ways to go about this that would have been wonderful for people to watch. And you don't have to bring controversy, and you don't have to have people worrying whether this fucking guy's going to wear a dress or he's going to do this or do that. You didn't need to worry about any of that stuff if you went the right way. What you're trying to prove is stupidity. You can't. You're alienating your audience. And the TPUSA, Turning Point USA, had the alternate halftime show. You don't really know the numbers yet. They will come out, and the NFL will distort the numbers as they always do, probably by Thursday. There are people who are saying that there are 125 million, 135 million people that watch the Bad Bunny thing. Those are all lies. Nobody knows what the numbers are, not even the networks. They find that out when they calculate on Thursdays. But the TPUSA, they're already beginning to think that there were about 5 to 6 million people that watched that. And that's significant. Now, it may not seem like a big number compared to 100 million viewers, but it's the first time they didn't have, the Kid Rock is a pretty big star, but he's not a powerful star. You get 5 million off of a one-time thing or a first-time thing, the NFL and the networks will look at that, and they will study that. And they will analyze what could happen 10 years from now. Because if you keep alienating your audience with these performers who sing in Spanish and all this stuff, they're going to turn away. And today it's 5 million. 10 years from now, it could be 50 million. And the NFL doesn't want that. They don't want you to have an alternative to their programming. Now, we're going to show you some of the Bad Bunny stuff. I looked at it like this. I've been to Puerto Rico. I was raised in New York. There's Puerto Ricans all over the place. It was nothing new to me. I looked at it like, hey, you got a bunch of chicks shaking their asses and some dude grabbing his crotch. What the hell? Who cares? But the whole thing with the sugar cane and the bodegas and these guys serving, ices and shit like that. You're trying to show America your Puerto Rican culture. I get it. And they're singing in Spanish for a reason. Why? Because it's a protest on Trump and ICE, who they feel is only targeting Spanish-speaking people in this country for deportation. I get it. You're going to take the biggest game in America of the year, basically an American holiday, and you're going to turn it into a Spanish event. Fine. It was 13 minutes that most people didn't even watch. But it was just tasteless, and I'll show you a clip here in the beginning. And listen, if you like, and I'm not complaining, if you like seeing Hispanic chicks gyrating their asses, I love it too. That's fine. Have at it. But you can't tell me that this is the height of culture. You can't tell me that this is as good as it gets for us. Maybe in America, because we seem to have lost our brilliance and creativity. There was a time where we were creating great music, great movies, great television. Those days are long gone now. And this is what the NFL and what the left wanted to show you as the peak of pop culture. Saluda a la DP, vamos a tirarnos un selfie.
Seichi, que se rían las que se olvidaron ya de mí. Me gusta mucho la Gabriel, la Patricia, la Nicole, la Sofía. Mi primera novia en Kinder María y mi primer amor se llama Batalía. Tengo una colombiana que me escribe todos los días y una mexicana que ni yo sabía. Otra en San Antonio que me quiere todavía y las de PR que toditas son mías. Una dominicana que juega bombón, ey, uva bombón. La de Barcelona que viene en avión. Con mi corazón quisiera mudarme con tu por una mansión. El día que me case te envío la invitación, muchacho, deja eso.
Antes tú me pichabas, ahora yo picheo. Antes tú me querías, ahora yo no quiero. Antes tú me pichabas.
Las mujeres en el mundo entero.
Antes tú me querías.
Peleando sin miedo. Yo peleo. Ay, ay, ay. Mueve. Ok, ay. Baby, anda fugado. Y yo quiero.
So you see a guy there grabbing his crotch. You see a bunch of Hispanic chicks gyrating and shaking their asses. And again, hey man, if you like that, more power to you. I had no problem looking at chicks shaking their asses. But is this it? Is this the best we can do? I mean, are we down to? Have we sunk this low? Conversely, on the other side of the ocean, at the Winter Olympics, you had the opening ceremonies in Milan. And I am not going to sit here and tell you and compare this stuff to Italian culture. There is nothing that compares to Italian culture. I know people are going to say, oh, yeah, fuck you. Blah, blah, blah. There is nothing that compares to it. And what we saw at the Milan Olympics, the opening ceremonies, was a small part of the Milanese Lombard culture, not even full Italian culture, but that of the culture of Milan, the architecture, the art, the fashion, the style, the swagger, the music. There was a huge difference. And I want to show you the difference that they had it on Friday and what we were subject to on Sunday. You know, when the Guineas do something, they do it better than everybody else. I just, it may sound biased or whatever. You can think whatever you want. That is night and day compared to what we were subject to yet last night. Now, again, this is the opening ceremonies. This is like 3 hours. It's been coordinated for years now. But that's taste. It's class. It's culture, it's history. What you saw last night was utter garbage. It was trash. It was just trashy. And you got a fucking guy, you know, he's got a jeweler selling fake jewelry because that's the whole thing. They sell jewelry that's pretty much fake. And he's got a guy selling ices. And he's got chicks just sitting around playing cards and, you know, and then he's got a bunch of girls wiggling their asses on the football field while he's standing on top of some fucking some house or barn, you know, holding his dick. I mean, what is that? Who wants to see that shit? And then you look at this, and this is the peak. That's the zenith of what Western civilization is. And the French are all up in arms because the shit that they embarrassed themselves at the Summer Olympics a couple of years ago with that garbage that they humiliated themselves. And France is right behind Italy when it comes to taste and culture and dignity, or at least they used to be. That's the one thing you'll never take away from Italy. They will never ever sacrifice their traditions for wokeness. It will never happen. France will do it. Spain sold out a long time ago. The English forget about it. America, we have no taste at all. But those people over there, they will never give up on their traditions for wokeness. Ever. It will not happen. Now, of course, the Orange Messiah had to get involved here. He gave his critique, if you will, of the halftime show. This is from Donald J. Trump. Quote, the Super Bowl halftime show was absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever, all in caps. It makes no sense. It's an affront to the greatness of America. It doesn't represent our standards of success, creativity, or excellence. Nobody understands a word this guy is saying. And the dancing is disgusting, especially for young children that are watching from throughout the USA and all over the world. Nobody around the world is watching the Super Bowl. Nobody cares. This show, in quotes, is just a, quote, slap in the face to our country, which is setting new standards and records every single day, including the best stock market. Of course, he's going to mention the stock market, including the best stock market and 401k in history. There is nothing inspirational about this mess of a halftime show, and watch. It will get great reviews from fake news media because they haven't got a clue of what is going on in the real world, all in caps. And by the way, the NFL should immediately replace its ridiculous new kickoff rule. In caps, make America great again, President Donald J. Trump. There you have it. We had a terrible Super Bowl. We had a tasteless halftime show. We need to learn from our granddads in Europe, especially the Guineas. We need to learn more from the Italians and how to do things. It doesn't pay to have chicks shaking their asses. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to remember that. It's going to here and there, and it'll be gone. People will remember the opening ceremonies and probably the closing ceremonies in Milan for years, and they'll try to copy it. But c'est la vie. And there's my 2 cents. Thanks again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Remember, my friend, Satan is always busy. You saw it on TV. Be a man and have a backbone, because masculinity and common sense are worth standing up for. And just remember, if it ends in an ism, it's a mental disorder. We'll see you later.